Hi, everyone. Welcome to Café IBTTA. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is Denis Mulligan, General Manager of the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District, which owns and operates the Golden Gate Bridge and provides bus and ferry service connecting the North Bay with San Francisco. Before becoming the General Manager in September 2010, Denis was the district engineer for almost a decade, responsible for the engineering and construction works for the district. Before that, Denis worked for Caltrans for over 18 years. Denis, welcome to Cafe IBTTA. It's great to have you with us.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
You bet. So this is Cafe IBTTA, where we drink coffee and we talk about topics that are interesting, relevant, uplifting, and fun. And this is the moment when I do the shout out to somebody. And this morning, the shout out is to the entire IBTTA membership and all the staff of IBTTA. And we shout out to you for all of the great work that you have done in the last 4 months to help preserve the community in IBTTA, to advance our advocacy efforts, and to deliver knowledge and education and help us put on lots of virtual events. It may be interesting for you to know that in the last 4 months, IBTTA, with the help of our members and staff, has held 32 digital meetups, webinars, and Cafe IBTTA. And over that time, we've had more than 5,500 attendees at those 32 events, which is more than 2.5 times the total attendance at all of our in-person events last year at IBTTA. So that's quite remarkable. What we lack in person, face-to-face contact and handshakes and hugs, we are making up for in virtual and digital connections. And we talked about this in the IBTTA Connection for August, which you should have received in your email inbox around 6 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday. I encourage you to take a look at that opening essay and the entire IBTTA Connection that's filled with news and information and a look back at what we've done to keep IBTTA together over the last 4 months. And if you hear from any of your colleagues who are saying, hey, what's going on at IBTTA? I hope you'll share the IBTTA Connection with them so they understand the great work that our members and staff are doing to keep the industry together. Well, we are taking your questions as always. We encourage you to use the chat function on your screen to ask questions at any time. And we ask you to set your chat function to all panelists and attendees. Now, before I ask Denis my first question, I want to engage you, the members of IBTTA, our viewers, in the chat. And we're talking about the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District. I'd like you, with one word or a short phrase, tell us about your feelings about the Golden Gate Bridge. One word or a short phrase. Open up your chat function now and tell us. Help Denis understand what the members of IBTTA feel about the Golden Gate Bridge. All right, they're starting to come in. Iconic, majestic, treasured, beautiful. Love. Wanda feels love. Beautiful, iconic. Whistling. Okay, we're gonna talk about that. Gateway, perpetual paint job. Yeah, we'll talk about that too. Great walk. All right. Landmark, unrepeatable, signature. Yes. A view to a kill. All right, we're getting into the movies now. Okay, so Denis, you can see what your audience thinks about the property that you operate. So we know it's iconic, and it's one of the most iconic structures in the world. People travel from everywhere in the world to see it, to photograph it, to walk across it, even to have their wedding photos made there. But Denis, your operation is more than the bridge. You also operate buses and ferries. Tell us about your operation and how you came to be the general manager.
Sure. Well, first off, I get paid to work here. We have a marine layer today, so behind me you can't see the bridge clearly because the fog is in, but this is my office. We're a unique agency in that we're well known because of the bridge. It's, as people said, iconic. But the reality is we're a boutique agency that owns an iconic structure that really is a transit district. In addition to owning and operating the Golden Gate Bridge, we have a fleet of buses and ferries that provides an alternative to driving the corridor. We're basically a little government monopoly. If you, like Andy Vermeer, one of your members, wants to get from his home to his office, I own Andy. It's our bridge, our bus, or our boat. The sidewalks are free. So we operate a bus and ferry system that prior to COVID, during the morning commute, took 23% of all trips into San Francisco. So our bridge, unlike any other bridge in the Bay Area, you could drive the speed limit during the morning commute because your neighbors subsidized with your tolls were riding our buses and boats.
So somebody mentioned whistling in the comments, and last week we had our first musical guest on Café IBTTA. Ed Regan from CDM Smith brought a video in which he showed the highlights of some of the CDM Smith dinners from over the years. But this week, our musical guest is the singing or humming Golden Gate Bridge. Let's take a look at this video, and then I'll ask you to comment on it, Dennis.
The Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco has long been something that tourists flock to see. Now it's something people in the Bay Area can hear. Turns out on a windy day, the bridge now hums.
What's that eerie sound coming from the Golden Gate Bridge? The mysterious hum is flooding social media. Can someone explain to me why this eerie sound has been going on for an hour, said one. You can hear this whistle all over the city, said another. For many, the hum is overwhelming and unpleasant.
I've lived here 25 years and I've never heard that sound before.
Tech consultant Mark Krieger lives 4 miles from the bridge. Even from that distance, he can hear the bridge hum.
You can hear kind of the different tones that are coming from the bridge, and it's pretty amazing, pretty overwhelming.
So what's suddenly causing the 83-year-old bridge to make such noise? It's the result of a project meant to improve the bridge's aerodynamics on windy days.
As part of this wind retrofit, we've been replacing handrail on the west sidewalk with new railing that has thin vertical slats designed to allow more air to flow through them. And we knew going into this wind retrofit that the bridge would sing during exceptionally high winds.
So maybe it's true what Bob Dylan once wrote about. The answer is blowing in the wind.
All right, Dennis, so tell us a little bit more about this wonderful singing bridge.
So it's a law of unintended consequences. We're doing a wind retrofit so we don't become another Tacoma Narrows bridge. You may recall from your high school physics class what happened to that bridge. So we replaced a rail and we thought there might be some small localized sound, but we did scale model testing of a cross section of the bridge, so we didn't pick up this phenomenon. And so clearly it was unexpected, the volume of it. It doesn't occur every day, but it's the Golden Gate Bridge. So that story was run by every national media outlet, print and TV. That was Inside Edition, Good Morning America, everybody covered it. It was covered all over Europe, parts of Asia, and parts of Africa. My press person who you saw there was on TV on multiple continents. So obviously, it's not a great thing. I'm not a musician, but the principal sound from the slats, which is the predominant sound, is 440 hertz, which I believe is called a Stuttgart pitch, which is used for tuning pianos and things for A over C. That's nice trivia, but it's not something we're proud of. The posts are a secondary component that's about 1050 hertz. So we brought on a consulting team led by HDR that also involves RWDI to do wind tunnel testing, not on a small model of the bridge, but a full-size section of the railing to replicate what's happening. We've had folks out there with acoustic cameras to see what components are contributing to the sound. And then we're going to look at what minor modifications or tweaks we could do to dampen the sound. It doesn't occur every day. It's very, very infrequent. We had a loud weekend, June 5th and 6th. Subsequent, it's only a couple of times. We're tracking the speed and direction of wind when it does occur. We're going back to historical records to see how often that might be. But if we could find some simple solution, like crushed walnut shells in the paint or something to break it up, we will. So we're going to explore a variety of little fixes. But we're just trying to up our game. We're very photographed, now we're also recorded from an audio perspective.
Well, our guest today is Denis Mulligan. He's the general manager of the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District, and we are taking your questions. Open your chat function and select all speakers and panelists, or all guests and panelists, and write us your question. So I have another question for you, Denis. COVID-19 is having a big effect on all transportation agencies around the world, and we have a photo right here of the Golden Gate Bridge, which you took on March 17th of this year, which shows a great dearth of traffic on the bridge. So tell us how you've responded to COVID-19, and tell us about the emergency funding the district received.
Sure. You know, we're a public agency and we're a toll agency, but we're a business. So when times get tough, cash is king. So we've looked very hard at how we can reduce costs. So we stopped moving the barrier except for needed construction. We have cut back on the ferry and bus service. But the good news is people were obeying shelter-in-place orders. The bad news is our revenues plummeted. We saw for about 4 weeks, traffic was down 70%. So we're seeing about 29 to 30% of our regular traffic for about a month. Traffic on the bridge has slowly come back, so we're down about 40%. Our buses were down 80%. So we're only seeing 20% of the historic traffic, and our ferries are still down over 90%. You know, until the public health officers say it's okay to reopen office buildings for non-essential workers, travel for commute purposes is way down, and that's a big chunk of our business. So we immediately, I took this photo from my balcony, but we immediately pushed this out to the media. We reached out to our elected officials. So when the CARES Act was passed several months ago, we were fortunate that we received money for our transit operations. To make up for the lost revenues and tolls that we use to subsidize transit and bus and ferry fare box recovery that we weren't getting. And so we've received about $50 million in CARES Act money. And then we've been active with our representatives in Washington, D.C. about the current coronavirus relief package that they're discussing as we speak to see if perhaps there'll be additional relief for transit.
Great. We have a question from Richard Ridings from HNTB. He talks about the bridge modifications 28 years ago when you introduced high-speed electronic tolling. Way to go. And, you know, you've had other modifications like the mobile barrier and going to all electronic tolling, I think in 2013. Tell us more about those developments, Denis.
You know, our agency likes to be on the cutting edge of things. So we went to all electronic tolling. I think we're the first bridge to do a retrofit or switch from manual to all electronic. In 2013, it was immensely successful. We built a movable median barrier about 5 years ago. We are building a suicide barrier as we speak. That's another challenge that we have here. There's a lot of mental health issues in our society, and unfortunately, we've become a magnet, so we're addressing that. But all electronic tolling was incredibly successful, and really, it's all about having a review of your business rules and doing a marketing campaign and just treating people like customers. And having first-class customer service. And so that's what I think made it successful for us.
Now, Denis, you have an interesting book on your book stand, 5 Frogs on a Log. Tell us what that's about and why you're reading it at this time.
Thanks, Pat. Great question. You know, like everybody else, I read books. A lot of the suggestions I get from my kids. But this one I picked up because in the Bay Area, we're one of over 24 transit agencies. And there's some policymakers that are saying there's too many transit agencies in the Bay Area. Maybe we should merge or combine them. And so 5 Frogs on a Log is an easy read. It's about mergers and acquisitions. And I thought I should become educated about how the business world looks at mergers and acquisitions in case, from a public perspective, there's a decision made that some transit agencies should be combined here in the Bay Area. It's an easy read. If you got a free weekend, I suggest you take a look at it sometime.
Denis, I was skimming the book, and one of the big lessons from the book seems to be to not have the transition be really long and extended over a long period of time, that you want to try to make the transition brief and really communicate well. Could you elaborate on some of those messages from the book?
Sure. One of the messages, it's a kid's riddle, is that, you know, you have 5 frogs sitting on a log and 4 of them decide to jump. What do you have? And the answer is you have 5 frogs on a log, because deciding to do something and doing them are totally different things. And so the book advocates ripping the Band-Aid off, being clear in your communication, be clear on how quickly you're going to do a transition and don't waste time. And there's lots of case studies of failed transitions where people took time, they had really large committees, and they didn't have clear objectives. And so having clear objectives in terms of strategic and economic, and so why you're doing a merger or acquisition is vital. Otherwise, it won't be successful. And so it talks about the pitfalls of having a sales pitch and not following through on it well.
Yeah. Here's a question from James Brown. He says, when you switched to AET, did you encounter any issues with maintaining or emphasizing historic elements of the bridge?
Yeah, that was a challenge. So we basically implemented AET using our existing toll plaza, and we did not at that time erect a gantry because we didn't want people to oppose the transition to all electronic tolling on historic grounds. Our toll plaza is technically not historic, it's been modified many times, but it's a cherished icon. And so we went to all electronic tolling, and the toll booths get hit a lot now because people drive faster. And so we have a project to construct a gantry. That project also will not talk about, or does not talk about, removing the toll plaza. But once the gantry's up, we may have a future project that then looks at perhaps the toll plaza is antiquated and should go. But we ducked the issue so that we could implement AET in a timely fashion because AET is good customer service, it saves money, and it speeds up traffic. And so we didn't want to be stymied in our attempt to implement it because of concerns about what happens to the toll plaza.
Dennis, returning to the singing or humming element of the bridge, we have a question about from Greg Mack. What was the reason for the new railing design rather than using the previous design that didn't hum?
So the original railing on the bridge is quite solid. If you look at it as a section, it's about 60% solid. And so it blocks a lot of wind. So it inputs lots of external energy on windy days into the bridge. And for sustained wind events, it would cause our bridge to collapse. And so we needed to replace it. So we came up with a design that looks very similar to what we have out there, but it's much more open. So it doesn't block the wind, it lets more wind through. So the original railing has pickets. And if the original railing was designed because they thought people would be scared to drive across the bridge. So if you're a driver and you look at a skew at the railing, it looks solid. But if you look orthogonal or perpendicular as a passenger, you can see through it, it's transparent. So we replicated that, but with really slender pickets. But the slender pickets let more wind through, and they have a natural frequency that creates wind. And so we want to interrupt that phenomenon in a simple way with some minor modification to it. But we needed to do the fix if we wanted the bridge to be here, to be the future, Star Trek, Starfleet Command headquarters like it is in Hollywood.
So somebody mentions that a few years ago you considered tolling for pedestrians and bicyclists on the bridge, and what figured into the decision making there not to do that?
Actually, when the bridge was originally opened, we had a sidewalk toll. We used to have turnstiles, you have to drop a dime and you go through. When I was a little kid growing up in the city, I remember it. It went away, and then the use of the sidewalks has changed. On a busy day in the summertime, pre-COVID, we would have 20,000 people on our sidewalks. We'd have 8,000 bicycles cross the bridge and 12,000 pedestrians walk partway out. That's like a concert. So we, explored it as an idea to look at a financial shortfall. It was one of 44 ideas that we put out there as a strategic financial plan. And if our board adopted the financial plan, it would not adopt any one of those things necessarily. It means we would study it. It was a work plan for staff to say, how would you do it? What are the costs and how much money you generate? And we put out that strategic financial plan on a Monday on our website. And by Friday for our board meeting, over 4,400 different individuals had commented on it, which is pretty extensive public outreach. We weren't seeking it, and 99.99% of them were opposed to it. So a couple days later, two of our state legislators introduced a bill in the legislature that would preclude us from ever having a sidewalk toll. There are some of our supporters in the legislature, so it was a little awkward because we opposed the bill unless it had a sunset clause in it, because we didn't want them to forever tie our hands on a potential revenue source. And so the then governor supported us, so the bill was amended and passed, and it sunsets actually at the end of this calendar year, but the authors are looking at doing another bill. But right now we legally cannot charge a sidewalk toll on the Golden Gate Bridge.
So thinking about the large public outpouring of opposition to a pedestrian toll on the bridge makes me think of demonstrations and protests that happen at the bridge. And obviously, you are watched based on not only what you do, but what you don't do. And I'm curious about how you manage the public relations as well as the safety of all these demonstrations and protests that may want to happen on or near the bridge.
So, the First Amendment is a right for all Americans. And the courts have said that public agencies can put in place rules that strike a balance between public safety and people's First Amendment right. So our board of directors has an ordinance that says what we'll allow, when, and how. So we're not content cops. So if you want to have a protest here, it doesn't matter what your content is. All that matters is that you comply with some basic rules on time of day. We don't want them during rush hour when there's more likely to cause an accident or something if there's distractions. We limit the size of signs so the wind doesn't blow it on a windshield of a car. But for Black Lives Matter, on June 6th, we had a young woman, 19 years old, apply for a permit, and she thought a couple hundred people might show up, and she generally thought that. But social media took over, and so we ended up having about 15,000 people show up that day. So it's a pretty significant event. The bridge is a popular place for expressive activities because it photographs well. On a clear day, it's a nice photo. And so we had extensive media coverage of that. Our staff, working with our allied law enforcement agencies, the California Highway Patrol, San Francisco Police Department, did a wonderful job of managing it. 15,000 people came. Some of them got out on the roadway. Nobody got hurt. And that's really what it's all about. It's about public safety. That's our primary mission on an event like that. And then obviously public convenience. And so the event, cleared from the roadway. We reopened it. Traffic volumes were really light, so the backup cleared in a couple minutes. And, it got a lot of press coverage.
Dennis, you mentioned earlier the suicide prevention system or the suicide barriers, and we have a question about that. We also have a question about the seismic retrofit planning and implementation. Could you talk to us about both of those efforts?
Certainly. Suicide is an issue we don't talk about in our community very much. For young people between the ages of 16 and 24 in our country, it's the second leading cause of death. The rate of suicide in our country has skyrocketed over the last decade. It used to be that the typical person that committed suicide was Pat and I, middle-aged white guy. That's changing. The number of veterans that are dying at home of suicide is greater than the number that have died overseas in the Afghanistan and the Iraq conflict. So it's a huge issue. And we become a magnet for it. So we actually spend a lot of effort trying to stop people from hurting themselves. Last year, 195 people came to the Golden Gate Bridge to hurt themselves. 167 were stopped and taken off the bridge for a psychiatric hold at a local hospital. But sadly, 28 died by jumping off the bridge. So several years ago, our board said, let's study what it would take to stop that. So we studied went through an environmental process to look at building a barrier to stop it. And that project is now under construction. What we're constructing is a net. It's located about 20 feet below the sidewalk. It'll extend out about 23 feet. And where nets have been erected, they've been 100% successful. Most people that attempt suicide that are unsuccessful or stopped never try again. There's been studies done specifically here at the Golden Gate Bridge and more broadly. About 2 years ago, the Harvard Public Health School did a study, and it showed that over 90% of all people that are stopped or unsuccessful never try again. So it's something that we're committed to doing. We were fortunate that we were able to get federal law changed, so the project was eligible for federal highway funds, and construction is proceeding. The net should be up by early 2023. The seismic retrofit, all the most vulnerable parts of the bridge have been retrofit. Some parts of the bridge have also been hardened to protect against man-made threats. But we do have a project to retrofit the most flexible part of the bridge, the part in all the postcards, the suspension bridge. And we'll be doing a construction manager, general contractor type procurement on that. And that RFP should be on the street in about 4 or 5 months.
All right. Now, Dennis, COVID-19 has had a big effect on everybody's operations and yours as well. You've got about 850 employees divided between the bridge, the buses, and the ferries. And you mentioned to me when we spoke earlier that most of the office administrative staff are working remotely, but you work 4 out of 5 weekdays there at the office. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. While 95% of our administrative staff is working from home, the bulk of our staff is on site. We have people that are out on the sidewalks grabbing people, trying to stop them from hurting themselves. We have painters and iron workers. We have bus operators and ferry captains. I think it's important for them to think that the boss is also willing to come in. They want to know that the boss is leading the organization, not hiding out in a cabin, hiding in the mountains. And so I think, mere physical presence for my role is important. So staff knows that I'm there with them every day, on site, doing my part while they do their part to keep people safe and keep traffic flowing.
You mentioned when there's protests or demonstrations, you limit the size of signs so that they don't fly off and hit vehicles or any person. You have a concern about recreational drones, not so much commercial drones, which the people, the operators know what they're doing, but recreational drones that get into the area of the Golden Gate Bridge. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sadly, common sense is not always common. So you can go online, buy a drone today, get it delivered tomorrow, say to a friend, here, hold my beer and watch this, and fly your drone in an unsafe fashion. We have had drones crash into the bridge. We have had drones crash onto the roadway of the bridge. If you were driving across the bridge and one hit your windshield, you'd probably be in a bad car accident. So before one hits a car windshield, we want to see some regulations in place. So we worked with Congress. Up until a year ago, the FAA was prohibited from any regulation of recreational drones, and local authorities were quite limited in what they could do. So we worked with Congress, so the last FAA reauthorization includes the ability now for the FAA to regulate hobbyist drones. So one concern is public safety, crashing on the roadway, hitting someone on the sidewalks. The other concern is critical infrastructure. We have areas around the bridge that are fenced off, multiple layers of fencing, intrusion detection, all sorts of bells and whistles. And if you're in there taking pictures, you'll be arrested, cited. We'll delete all your photos after reviewing them, and some law enforcement person will talk to you. But you can fly a drone in that exact same space, be 6 feet above the ground hovering, and that's not right, whether it's the Golden Gate Bridge or a nuclear power plant. And so there needs to be better rules because it was the Wild West. It's slowly getting better. It's an area that we're ardently interested in because we don't want people getting hurt at the bridge.
Dennis, a couple of questions I like to pose to industry leaders are these. One is, what's the thing you miss most about the pre-COVID-19 world? And what do you think will be the biggest change we see in transportation in the next 2 years?
What I miss most is the customers and the associated revenue. It's no fun living through a historically significant event, particularly when it affects your bottom line so severely. In terms of the next couple of years, the biggest challenge is changing travel patterns. I think this is a permanent reset that will occur. A lot of people are working from home and a lot of people are figuring out ways to do it. A lot of companies are saying, we're not reopening for a while. Google announced that they're not opening their offices until July of next year. Twitter announced it today. Well, those are my customers, and my customers aren't going to come back in the same way. And when they come back, there may be different travel patterns. So adjusting to those changes, I think, is one of our biggest challenges.
Dennis, we're going to pause for just a moment while I make a couple of announcements of upcoming events. Next week, our guest on Café IBTTA is Bob Poole, Director of Transportation Policy at the Reason Foundation. August 18th, we have a Zoom meetup hosting public meetings virtually, featuring Logan Hodges with the North Carolina Turnpike Authority, Deanne Heath with the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority, Kim Polton with HNTB, and Jose Dios with the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. And then September 14 through 16, register for IBTTA's virtual annual meeting and exhibition. Get fired up, register today, save time, and invite everyone from your organization to participate in the virtual annual meeting. It's free. Registration is free to all IBTTA members. We're excited about welcoming lots of new people. Let's break Zoom. Let's get all these people registered to come and join us. And we encourage you to visit ibtta.org/events for all the details and to register for upcoming events. Dennis, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your insights and knowledge on the seismic retrofit, all of the activities taking place in the district. It's been fascinating.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and to you, IBTTA members, our viewers, thanks to you. Be safe, keep in touch, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks, everybody.